In November 2021, global leaders and activists are gathering in Glasgow, Scotland, for the COP26 summit on climate change. Decisions made here will have a material effect on all our lives, as pressure grows to halt carbon emissions and rising temperatures on land and sea. We are already at 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Scientists tell us we must stay below a 1.5 degree temperature rise to avoid catastrophic climate change.
I think it's fair to say that it is very serious. In a sense, the more we know about climate change, the more the science community gets concerned. In a sense, the more we know, the worse it looks. And just one example is that the impacts of climate change are accumulating almost day by day.
The human influence on global climate is unequivocal, like it's a matter of fact rather than a matter of probability.
For the Pacific Islanders, the most important thing is capping the global temperature increase at 1.5 degrees. Because once we exceed the 1.5 degrees threshold, then definitely there'll be collapse or impact on the different small island countries' ecosystems, economy, and also livelihood. So the biggest risk that we are looking at in the Pacific right now is the risk to habitability of the small islands, as well as disappearance of those small islands.
Although the Pacific Islands are responsible for just 0.03% of global emissions, they are paying a heavy price for rising temperatures. More intense and frequent cyclones are battering the region every year. Higher temperatures means more mosquito-borne disease and health risks. More pressure on food security as crops struggle and coral reefs die.
We were absolutely terrified when we read the IPCC report, because instead of the figures coming down, it's gone up. And the warning is they're very stark warning to all of us, and particularly to the major emitters and developed countries of the world. Either we reverse direction and reduce our carbon emissions, and achieve 1.5 at COP26, or we face horrendous consequences with climate change.
Pacific leaders are seeking better access to climate finance and insurance to help mitigate the effects at home. They are concerned about the difference in spending when only 20% is being spent on adaptation compared to 80% on mitigation.
Access to finance is very, very difficult. The way it's structured, it's very difficult for small island countries with small capitals, in their administration to access those funds. Just last year, the report from OECD was that about 2% of global climate finance, flowed to the small island developing states. This is totally wrong. It's totally at odds with the spirit of the Paris Agreement, and it does nothing for the damage that small island developing states, to help them overcome and build resilience to climate change. The whole architecture of the finance needs to be reviewed and redone.
Pacific leaders want to have a Pacific Climate Facility actually based in the region to distribute funds locally and support green tech innovation. The Pacific is moving quickly to adopt renewable energy, becoming the first countries in the world powered by renewables. With its low carbon footprint, the Pacific offers lessons to the world about how to live a more sustainable life. Many hope COP26 will be a turning point, where leaders commit to high ambitions and action.
This is a critical moment for the world, and we want as many world leaders to come to Glasgow to make that collective commitment, seriously higher ambition, and across 4 key pillars or goals that we have set ourselves on mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration.
Reaching net zero by 2050 is too late. Scientists say we need to radically cut emissions by 2030 to stay in the control room.
The urgency has been something many Pacific Island countries have been calling for since the 1980s. So this is nothing new. A lot of the actions we've been waiting for have not been undertaken. in terms of states' responsibility in mitigation practices, but also in terms of financing, in terms of to support the adaptation.
I've often referred to an analogy of what would happen, the real impacts of climate change have. The vision of what happened with the movie, the Titanic, there were those that were in the lifeboats, and the question was this: would those on the lifeboat bother to bring in those who are in the freezing water? Countries like Australia and other countries will be in the lifeboat. Will they pull us on board, or will they push us off? So we need some firm commitment by someone or a group of people in the international community, some country, to say, if and when you have nowhere else to go, you've run out of options, we will bring you on board and we have the solutions for you. That's not being forthcoming yet.
This COP26, Pacific leaders and activists will be banging the drum and making some noise. We need healthy oceans. We need to build resilience to more cyclones and natural disasters. We need global leaders to step up. And we all need to do our bit as individuals too. Let's look after our blue Pacific continent so future generations inherit the beautiful world we live in.